there, I'm Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, our weekly look at the world of business and finance. This week, the curse of oil. BP licks its wounds, Washington launches scathing attack after attack as everyone tries to learn the lessons of now and before. Also, more sanctions on Iran over its nuclear ambitions, but what about the impact on business in the Islamic Republic? And win-win, perhaps, just who'll really clean up at football's World Cup? The world governing body, the sponsors, or first-time hosts, South Africa. So let's start this week in the Gulf of Mexico, coming on for 2 months now since the Deepwater Horizon oil rig went down, sparking not only the biggest environmental disaster the US has seen, but the biggest government versus big business stoush we've seen since, well, the last one, which, given this economic crisis, probably wasn't that long ago. Still, the language used by the US president has been tough because he too, along with BP, has been accused of not doing enough to plug the oil leak.
I was down there a month ago, before most of these talking heads were even paying attention to the Gulf. A month ago, I was meeting with fishermen down there, standing in the rain, talking about what a potential crisis this could be. And I don't sit around just talking to experts because this is a college seminar. We talk to these folks because they potentially have the best answers, so I know who's ass to kick.
Yeah, there you go. And those very choice words, whose ass to kick, were aimed at the hapless CEO of BP, Tony Hayward, a man who made the mistake of saying on television that he wanted all this fixed as much as anyone and that he, quote, wanted his life back. Remember, 11 people died in the initial accident on the rig. Not a smart choice of words there. In response, the president said Hayward, quote, wouldn't be working for me after any of those statements. Obama's words wiped $4 billion off the value of BP's stock. And that slumped further to 14-year lows as the list of demands from the US administration grew, including wages for laid-off oil rig workers because of President Obama's moratorium on deepwater drilling. It is, in so many more ways than one, a big mess in the Gulf of Mexico. Kath Turner is there for us with more.
Just about everything related to BP is on a downward slide. Its image, its reputation and its shares. This week they hit a 14-year low and have fallen by more than 40% since the Deepwater Horizon explosion on the 20th of April.
We are just average people trying to do what we think is right.
Some in Britain are now worried that the anger and rhetoric coming out of the US could push the company into an irreversible financial decline.
There's been an epic and unparalleled environmental disaster, but I think that the best thing now is not to get into too much name-calling and buck-passing and attempts to damage the reputation of a great British company, but to get on, work together to sort it out.
A former ambassador to Washington says it's time for political leaders in London to speak up.
Probably the moment has come for the British government at a pretty senior level to say to the Americans, don't forget that there is a vital British interest at stake here, and that interest is the survival and the long-term prosperity of BP, which, by the way, is a major investor and a major employer in the United States of America itself.
The Obama administration is downplaying the impact on transatlantic ties.
I don't see it as a source of tension. BP is a private company, and this is about the impact of a tragedy in terms of the explosion of the oil platform and the resulting oil spill, and this is not about relations between the United States and its closest ally.
But there can be no doubt about the growing level of anger Washington is directing at the oil giant. At all levels, officials regularly remind Americans in this election year exactly who will be picking up the tab.
The American people will not pay a dime for the cleanup of the Gulf region, and that BP will be held responsible for all the damages that have occurred.
There were several other companies involved in the Deepwater Horizon operation, but BP is the public face of the oil crisis, attacked for its corporate greed and mismanagement.
To those affected and your families, I'm deeply sorry.
BP has spent millions of dollars on an ad campaign in a bid to calm the critics, but this Louisiana businessman is one of many who says it's too late.
Congratulations, BP. You've done something that our federal government couldn't do, mortgage bankers couldn't do to me, and greedy Wall Street couldn't do. You put me out of business today, totally.
BP says the cost of its response to the crisis has reached about $1.4 billion. The company will be writing checks for some time to come as the oil casualties continue to mount.
We move to Iran now, and the almost inevitable next round of sanctions on the Islamic Republic became a reality, despite the efforts of Turkey and Brazil to dissuade the rest of the UN Security Council. In a range of moves aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program, the resolution will more than double the number of Iranian companies whose assets are frozen. UN member states must exercise vigilance with the Central Bank of Iran and other Iranian banks. But after pressure from Russia and China, Iran's oil and gas industries will not be targeted. The thing with these sanctions is that it's always claimed they don't target the Iranian people. They instead go after specific businesses and individuals with direct links to the government. But there is an argument which says Iranian business by association gets hit too. That's what I learned from Babak Imamian, who I spoke to earlier in the week. He is chairman of the British Iranian Business Association in London.
I have to say the effects have been there for a long time, and the negative sentimental effects are, I give you an example. Let's take our association. There are 2,500 professionals, expatriate Iranians, who are very successful around the world. Just because of the sentiment about sanctions and dealing with Iran would cause problem, none of us are interested to deal with Iran. So Iran is losing friends like us, expatriate community, losing everyone else. But there are also other costs, like the financial cost of transactions, which is costing the Iran $35 billion a year. There is also, Iran needs access to foreign funds for its investment. It can't sell its government bonds at even yield of 8%, where Greece, which is bankrupt, can sell its bonds at 6%.
All right, so we've got trade running as a sort of common thread this week, and you'll see more on it later in the broadcast. We brought all such related ideas together with the US Undersecretary of Commerce and Trade, Francisco Sanchez, who dropped by this week. He's been in the job for just 3 months and chose the Middle East as his first overseas tour. I began by asking him if it was difficult building relations in this part of the world, given the way issues like Iran often shape the geopolitical agenda.
Well, you know, I think we have to, if we want to build our commercial relationship, we have to go forward knowing that there may be political challenges at any given time. So I am not, it hasn't stopped me from coming forward and reinforcing these relationships with these two countries. And we start with a very good foundation. So the fact that there may be political concerns at any given moment should not preclude us from continuing to build those commercial relationships.
So you're confident you can keep politics and business apart in this case?
Well, I'm confident that I can help build on a very strong commercial relationship.
This administration is coming down very, very hard on BP at the moment. I think a lot of people are saying this is a good thing, making them accountable. Is that a risk as well? Can that scare off business, seeing a president, particularly the president, the man at the top, coming down so hard on BP?
Well, I think the president has every right to hold anybody accountable, particularly for what some people are saying could be one of the worst environmental disasters in our history. And so I don't think he's doing anything that's inappropriate. We have a real problem. We're very concerned on so many levels. The environmental impact to start with. Then you look at the the economic impact for small businesses along multiple states in that part of our country. So we have reason to be concerned, and we have reason to expect BP to be held accountable.
I don't want to use the word frighten, but almost to frighten companies into knowing that you have got to be accountable here, that big business might have got an easy ride before and it won't happen anymore.
Well, I don't know that it's to frighten anybody, but I think it is to make clear that in any activity that a company engages in, they need to take the proper measures to safeguard from these type of things happening.
But it won't, in your opinion, scare anyone off in investing and trading and bringing their money, bringing their expertise into the United States?
I don't believe so. I've not seen any evidence of that, and I think most people that I've talked to find it perfectly reasonable that we expect accountability in this situation.
The Eurozone, so many problems recently there, and we tend to focus on the Eurozone in its entirety. Trade with the US, has it been affected? Is it something you're watching very carefully?
Hard to measure. We've not seen any immediate impact, but I think if we look at our total trading relationship, we do not expect it to have a significant impact on our trading with the world. We not only trade with Europe, but we're trading substantially with Asia, with the Middle East.
The fear of contagion, you must be worried about that as well. I mean, this has been the big thing, that the spread and the fact that this economic crisis can swim if it wants to and get over the Atlantic.
Well, we're optimistic, and Secretary of the Treasury Geithner has been in regular communication with his counterparts throughout Europe. And it seems to me that Europe is taking measures to try to bring some stability to this. So concerned, yes, we are. We're keeping an eye on what's happening with the euro and in Europe. But we also recognize that our trading relationships extend beyond Europe, and we're confident that that as it stands now, it should not have a largely negative impact on U.S. trade.
When you look at the problems that, for example, the Eurozone is happening, if I relate it to back here, seeing as that's why you're here, the idea of, and there is the idea of a monetary union here in the Gulf, of a shared currency, of unpegging from the dollar. When you look at the problems that, for example, the Eurozone's having, does it make you think that maybe this isn't the right idea for the Gulf, that it should be holding off in this part of the world?
Well, I think that's the decision that the Gulf countries will have to make, and in talking with government officials here, they seem to move with caution and very prudently.
When counting the cost returns, is China turning a blind eye to striking workers, and is it a ploy to in fact inflate the economy? Plus a multi-billion-dollar money-making machine which just happens to be a sporting tournament. It is football's World Cup. Who's making the money? We've got the answers in a moment.